In the vast expanse of the desert, the more things change, the more they remain the same. And then comes along a strong gust of wind, and you find yourself lost as an unsuspecting lark that caught an extra strong thermal. This is the mighty Thar Desert. Arid, relentless, insurmountable and unforgiving. Braving the Thar is not a feat for the faint of heart. In fact, it is a feat that separates the men from the boys. Each year, a bunch of mad hat adrenaline junkies brave the Thar to gain bragging rights and look down upon the boys. Welcome to the dusty, sandy and generally haywire madness of the 2014 Desert Storm Rally.
Whenever you're driving in the storm, you're driving the car to its max. Always. It's always peaking. So, there's more strain on the engine and everything. So, making the car last those 3,000 kilometers is a big thing also.
Continuously you're fighting with the car because there's no straight road. It's always on the turn, always turn, sand dune. It was nice, and hums. Your whole body gets rattled.
We hit a bump and I missed a couple of calls, and we were 10 feet in the air before I knew it, and all my gadgets in my hand, everything flew off. And yeah, those moments are there, but the idea is not to get deterred by those moments and how quickly you can come back on the track and maintain the same pace that you were going on.
It's been 12 years since the first time rally cars took start to brave the treachery of the desert sands and arid bone-dry landscapes that are the home of the Desert Storm Rally. The ceremonial start of the storm took place at the Grand in New Delhi, and 250 rallyists across categories, the highest ever to register for the storm, geared up for 2,200 kilometers of hardcore back-breaking motorsport action. The good chaps at Northern Motorsport who organized the Desert Storm Rally do not believe in saving the best for last, and so among the many challenges that the storm throws at the rallyists, the most daunting is the first one to hit them. It comes in the form of the formidable night stage.
The night stages is something that for some inexplicable reason seems to scare everyone. I don't know why, because it's the same route and they do that every year. They do it during the day, but as soon as they do it during the night, something seems to happen, and a lot of people get stuck and a lot of people get lost.
Well, as always, the night stages are a little tricky. We can't see much, and visibility is down to a minimum, and a lot of confusion with the pace notes. Rather the trippy.
In the night, you basically can see as much as your lights go. So that's the tricky part there. But otherwise, if you're sensible and keep your calm, you'll never get lost.
After the 300-odd kilometer transport from New Delhi, the storm regrouped at the town of Sardar Sheher for the start of the two night stages. The first stage started from the hamlet of Kudia and ended 27 kilometers later at Amarsar. Then, after a 54-kilometer transport was the second night stage, which began ahead of Kalu and ended at Sivani. Navigating through the desert in daylight is a task in itself. Doing it post-sundown takes things to another level altogether. The biting cold, the anxiety of the start of a rally, the shift to off-road driving, after traversing a 320-kilometer liaison on tarmac. All these clubbed together make for a situation which is not conducive to getting into a state of mind that one needs to be in to keep the car on the road in 2 long competitive desert driving stages.
I mean, the first night stage is bad enough. Last year I was lost in that night stage for close to 45 minutes. I didn't know where I was. I thought it's over.
Just the catch was not to get lost, and the one or two places where if you get lost you tend to go into deep sand. But we've learned from previous years in this Desert Storm not to do that.
The Desert Storm's night stages are famous for being the undoing of many stalwarts. This year was no different. Former PWRC champion Karamjeet Singh, driving for Team Maruti, had a clutch failure and dropped out in the second night stage. Shortly after that, the second Team Maruti Vitara, housing the formidable team of 9-time Raid de Himalaya winner and the Storm's defending champion Suresh Rana, along with ace navigator Ashwin Nayak, also ended their 2014 hopes with a clutch failure.
Both our Karam and Rana driving both the Vitaras had the same problem. The clutch completely burned out. Karam dropped out in the second stage after almost about 22 kilometers into the stage, and we packed up 8 kilometers before the flying finish.
Another one of the many casualties was former INRC champion Vikram Matthias, who was driving the lone Team Mahindra Scorpio. Of the 55 extreme cars that took start from Kundia, only 34 reached the end of the leg at Kalu.
It was good. We managed to get through cleanly. Didn't get lost much. But the only problem was the dust, which is, there was no wind. So we had to literally crawl for about 6 odd kilometers. We lost time, but not that much. In second leg, we were fastest.
The night stages were sandy, they were twisty, curvy, there were rough areas in the middle. But yeah, the sand was the biggest challenge, I guess, in the night stage. That if you went off track, you were bound to get stuck.
The morning saw the start of the rerun of the night stages in the reverse direction. With the sun shining brightly, visibility was no longer an issue. But after 50 odd cars had passed through the same route in the night, the stage's terrain was massively dug up, not to mention the misleading tracks of the several cars that had lost their way in the night. Add to that the ordeal of having driven through the night, it didn't look like it was going to be easy. Well, it never is. And between the very and even a semblance of respite stood a heady mix of sand and rut in the form of a 105-kilometer long competitive stage. Respite was far off. Very far off.
No respite, no rest. Back to back 2 stages and then followed by that sand dune bashing in the morning. We did the same night stage, both of them combined, on the way back. That time they look harder, The entire expanse of desert, the vast desert, tracks going everywhere. I'll say it was easier in the night doing those 2 stages rather than doing them in one go in the daytime.
Going through a dune, I couldn't, it was a turn over a dune, and my car just stopped and it got stuck. So we had to dig ourselves out. We lost a lot, 30 minutes yesterday and today 20-25 minutes.
The storm did not stop exacting its toll even in daylight. And reigning APRC champion Gaurav Gill, driving a Team Mahindra XUV 500, dropped out due to a mechanical failure in the long stage.
So I tried to, do whatever I could. We tried to take the water off and we refilled the whole radiator with fresh water. But it just went a few kilometers and again just shot up the temperatures going overboard. So I had to bail out of the whole rally.
That put Gill's teammate, 6-time Desert Storm champ and last year's runner-up Sunny Sidhu's XUV 500 in the lead. And hot on his heels was the third Mahindra car being driven by Lohit Aras. Following these two giants was the Team Z rallying Gypsy in the hands of young gun Abhishek Mishra and a Team Thunderbolt Gypsy driven by Sandeep Sharma. The Gypsy was again contributing to the thickening of the plot. This was going to be interesting to watch.
So the night stage timings were good, and we'd started number 20 at the first day, and by that day end in Bikaner we were already running number 6. So we had covered up a lot of ground and made some good timings.
Leg 2 of the storm began from Bikaner in a liaison to the hamlet of Jamsar, ending 64 kilometers later at Chhattargarh. Post that was a 108-kilometer long transport to the town of Pilap, which was the start of a 105-kilometer long competitive that ended at Bodhana. Finally, leg 2 ended in beautiful Jaisalmer. From Bikaner, the rallies had an early morning start. It was going to be a 400 odd kilometer long day, out of which 170 was competitive. The stages were a mix of rut, gravel and of course sand traps. But what deterred the drivers was the twisty route. In the desert, tulips with a lot of back and forth are not your best friends. Leg 2 also saw Gaurav Gill and Suresh Rana's cars take a restart. Their penalties were too high for them to fight for the overall championship. They were driving for stage wins and R&D on their cars. Not to mention the consequent glory.
We are ready to go for the day 2. We said we'll run the Super Rally format where we enter with a lot of penalties, but then we wanted to get some miles into the car, and also for our experience to drive through the stages. And we're looking at stage victories, which is very, very important for us to keep our morale high, because going after a DNF home is not a good thing for us.
Sunny Sidhu was first out of the stage and it looked like he had consolidated his lead. But the pack was hot on his heels and a tough fight was going on. In the moto category, CS Santosh came out first, followed by Dakar Rally rider Helmut Fravolna. Third was the 450cc KTM of Trivikram Singh.
Right off the stage start, the map that I was running wasn't the one that I needed to run, so I had to stop, lost a minute or two trying to reset the map. Came around a corner and then there was this fence that somebody had dismantled and it was just lying there, barbed wire and then a pole and stuff like that. And I just pretty much just kissed it or nicked it. And the next thing I know, I just come to a standstill. The whole thing's got entangled in my bike. I had to, and just to move the bike in sand itself is difficult. So I had to reverse the bike in sand, claw that thing out, and then get going again.
You're fighting with Mother Earth. You're fighting with yourself. You're fighting with the bike. It's great fun, good adventure. I mean, amazing feeling. I think so many times this phrase must have said, keeps the boys away from the men.
Stage is done. The Storm headed to hardcore dune country. Jaisalmer was calling. Rallying is all about hits and misses. You miss a call and you take a hit. They say that in the Desert Storm Rally, if the navigator can keep the driver on the road, 70% of the job is done.
A little mistake on the navigation part can put you off 5 kilometers off the track, yeah. And once you're off, you never know it's got swamp or you got loose sand or what you've got, and you get bogged, game over.
Jaisalmer was a 6 AM start for the Storm. First stage was 87 kilometers and began at Hada, ending at Lakmana near the famous dunes of Sam. Post that was a short 1.2 kilometer stage starting at Mangalyavas, leading straight into the third stage which ended again at Sam. The last competitive of the day was the first stage run backwards. The third leg of the 2014 Desert Storm comprised of 4 stages, a total competitive distance of close to 200 kilometers. The first stage was 86 kilometers of gravel and rut, which ran through a lake bed and saw the drivers go flat out.
The initial part was sandy, then we went into a very dry lake bed, flat, smooth for about 7-8 kilometers. Flat out driving, we touched a top speed of about 165 over there.
The speedometer is, if you see, is still the old one which says 0 to 140. But our meter used to cross 140 and reached 0 again. So it means more than 150 or something.
Post the flat-out first stage, the organizers had a surprise for the competitors. A surprise made up of loose sand. And then the fun began. The ground rule of the Storm is that it allows no recce, and even after the drivers walked in for a little peek at the stage, the sand caught them unawares. Barring the first few cars, everyone was going everywhere.
Unless and until we create a need for a car to be capable of doing this, a rally car will never be made so that it can do this. And if we need to make the the Maruti Suzuki Desert Storm go where it needs to be going, then we need to have stages like this where there are dunes and it's an actual cross-country environment for the car to be driven.
Now the dune was quite easy, it looked difficult. We climbed up the first dune, all right. There's a very small dune and as soon as we reached over there, my four-wheel drive went into neutral. So the car again got bogged down there. We lost time there again.
Scared everybody so much. They said maintain momentum, and what I did was I maintained too much momentum and ended up overshooting the line, and I went onto a mount. The vehicle got cross-axle, so we got stuck over there. I mean, it wasn't that much of this thing. If you drove with brains, which I did not, you could have gotten through.
After the dune bashing in the second and third stages, it was time for terra firma. The fourth stage again took the drivers through the lake bed, and after slipping and sliding in the sand, the gravel and rut seemed almost welcoming. After 200 kilometers of competitive, so did Jaisalmer. The fourth leg started with a 203-kilometer liaison to take start ahead of the hamlet of Bap, ending 44 kilometers later in Nokra. The second stage of the day was a reverse of leg 2's 105-kilometer stage and ran from Bodhana to Pilap. From there, it was onwards to Bikaner. I'm standing just ahead of the start of special stage 11, fondly called the Thar Express. The route has almost legendary status in the stages of the Desert Storm. It runs parallel to the railway line between the hamlets of Bap and Nokra. And all the driver needs to do is keep the track on their left, put pedal to the metal and go straight ahead through 45 kilometers of rut, gravel and sand traps. 31 of the 55 extreme cars that took start remain. Who else falls by the wayside? Only Bikaner will tell. The drivers took to the Thar Express stage with the same vengeance that trains reserve for railway lines. This was an old route. Finally, familiar territory. Here getting lost was very hard, so it was time for flat-out recklessness. The rally was almost at an end. There were cars to be overtaken and there was time to be made.
Actually, when we are going with the track, we know the flow is so nice when you're going along with the railway track. We're doing 170, 180 there. That is, these stages really pump us up. They make us feel very nice that we are doing there. In a normal sandy stage, everybody does the same average. Here, we make 20 seconds a kilometer on the other guys.
The last stage of leg 4 was set to be the game changer. It was the last longest competitive before the end of the rally. It was here that the positions were going to be sealed. This was basically make or break. Sunny Sidhu's monster XUV was in the lead, and after Abhishek Mishra topped out, Sandeep Sharma's Gypsy in Team Thunderbolt's colours was firmly running in second. Behind them were Amartej Bhuval and Nakul Mehndiratta, again in a stock Gypsy, being given a hard chase by former APRC driver Lohit Aras's menacing XUV. The fight was on, and the game almost over.
The long stage was pretty hectic because our car, the chassis had broken. So again, we couldn't push it and we were just trying to be consistent. But the car was giving some real problems. By the end of the day, it was welded up again. The car was good to go.
Bikaner, where the cars were frantically being worked upon in